Hey everybody. So this is the behind the scenes of basically how I did the random number generation test project that we were working on. So first I'm coming in here and creating a new Windows Forms application. I'm just going to name this Rando Testo. Go ahead and go here. So it'll go through, create the new project. This is pretty standard stuff. If you've worked with Visual Studio, Visual Basic before, then you'll totally know what all is going on here. So the project that I did is in Visual Basic.net, and apparently my Visual Studio is acting up right now. All right. So this is Visual Studio Express 2016. You can download that if you want to. We're just going to have a new form going here. I'm going to open up the toolbox. It's over here, make sure you can see it. We're going to add in some labels. I'm just going to Control C, copy that, Control V, paste that, make a few copies of the labels here for the different things. Should they line up just because I'm a bit of a stickler for that sort of stuff. So I got 5 labels there, and over here I'm going to put 5 more labels for the values. So the ones on the left side are going to be the ones for our telling us what the value is. Those other ones are going to be the value. Then I'm going to go ahead and make a button. This is going to be for starting the first test. I'm going to go ahead. I don't need this anymore. Actually, one last thing. Go ahead and throw a timer in here. I usually initialize timers at runtime, but just for the sake of this one, I went ahead and created the timer there. So I'm going to resize this form. Hopefully you can see it. Little camera overlay isn't getting in the way. Alright. So I've got this one button. I'll make a couple more buttons for the various tests we're going to run. There we go. Got several different buttons, several different labels for these tests. I'll go ahead and resize these buttons so that it looks nice. Again, just because I'm being a little bit of a stickler. So label 1, I'm going to go ahead and say value 1%. That's going to be the percent of the first value, 2%, percent of the second value, value 3%, value 1 and 2 count. If you've already watched the video, you know what this is about. Value 1 and 2 count. And then, sorry, value 1 and 3 count. There we go. And then value 2 count. Alright. And then this one's just going to be run coin flip. And then this one's going to be run 3 random part 1. Run 3 and part 2. And then we're going to do run 3 random part 3. Alright. I'm going to save this just because I like to save often. Now I'm going to go ahead and double click on Run Coin Flip. That is going to open up the code behind. And the first thing I'm going to do is randomize. Waiting for it to load here. And I'm just doing this for the heck of it. Basically, now that I'm in the class behind, I'm going to make a couple of global variables for me to mess with. The first one is going to be a set of threads. I'm doing this just basically for helping out with the multi-threading so that I can launch all of my loops inside of a thread and still do all of the application events without having to worry about the do event. So I can still click on things and the application doesn't look like it's frozen up. Might be a little bit more complicated programming thing, but if you guys want me to, let me know in the comments. I'll cover some of the threading stuff later. So first I'm going to import system.threading. That way I can mess with this. Going to create this worker thread. As that. And then I'm going to go ahead and create my own little private sub to run through the loop for the first button click. I probably don't even need that randomized, but whatever. So first test. And then I don't need anything, it's just a sub there. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to do for, let's say A equals 1, 2, and what I did for the video was 100 million, so that's 100, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, just doing that so that I can make sure that I'm at 100 million. So we're going 1 to 100 million, and then I'm going to randomize, and then this first test is going to be doing the coin flip. So this is going to show me value 1, value 2, and show a value 1 count, a value 2 count. I'm going to use the same label as value 1 and 3 and value 2, so it just shows value 1, value 2, give you a good idea on that. So we're also going to up here do this. Yeah, we're going to do number 1 as integer, number 2 as integer, and number 3 integer. Okay, that should be good. And so I'll go ahead and get rid of this. So here I'm going to have number 1 equals 0, number 2 equals 0, because basically I'm setting these in case we're running it again or whatever. I have label, let's see, start at 6, text equals nothing, actually, not nothing, 0, 0%. Label 7.text. So basically right now I'm just setting these labels to be nothing, or, well, to be 0% or whatever the default empty value is going to be. And then label 9 is going to be equal to 0. Oops. And label 10 dot, if I can type, is going to be equal to 0. If you don't know, like I said, I'm just setting all of these values to the default so that if I am clicking the button after running a different test, it'll reset everything for me. And actually, speaking of that, I think I will just do a private sub reset values. And this is just a good idea to do if you're going to be doing anything like this. If you're going to be repeating something a lot, to break it out into a separate subroutine or function so that you're not repeating code everywhere. So now I can just call reset values, and it'll reset all of those like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do thread equals new thread address of first test. So this is going to make this thread be running as that subroutine that I created. Is background equals true. I'm going to make it into a background thread, and then I'm going to start it. So basically what I've done here is I have set this worker thread. It's just a new background thread as the address of this subroutine here. So that's all going to be running in the background while everything else is happening. And I'm going to do my bit in here in just a second. Let's see. So outside of the loop, I'm going to make this an integer, and then I'll go ahead and make this equal 0 just to start off with. And then I'm going to now enter in the way that is commonly done for randomizing. And this is how I showed in the video, the common method of randomizing numbers. So I'm going to do random num is equal to, and for this I'll just go ahead and do round. Actually, I forgot that I need to import math. Doesn't do it right away. And honestly, I don't really need to, because what I see a lot, and I'll just use it for this, quotient. And then we're going to do R&D times 2. Actually, R&D plus 1. Okay. So that, let's see if I'm remembering right, that should get me a number between 1 and 2. Right there. Yeah, that should give me a number between 1 and 2. And then I'll go ahead and for this do a select case on random. Do case 1, and case 2, case, actually, I don't even need to do case 2. Just case 1, case else, because it should only be 1 and 2. I'm going to go ahead, if it's 1, I'm going to do number 1 plus equals 1, and number 2 plus equals 1. Alright, so basically what I'm doing is I'm checking to see if the number is 1. If it's 1, then I add 1 to number 1. If it's 2, I add 1 to number 2. The reason that I'm using select case there is it's actually faster, especially in debug, when you're looking at that versus an if-then statement. But now that I've got that done, one of the other things I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a on load for this form. It's a little different than what I'm used to for my flows at work. So I'll just do this from memory. Load. This way, when the form loads, I will have some stuff to execute. Basically, what I'm going to execute here is the timer. So I'm going to do timer1.interval. I'm going to set that to half second. That's 500 milliseconds would be half second. And then I'm going to do timer1.start. And so this is going to start that timer that I created there. And basically all the timer is doing is it is going to be updating all of these forms for me. So I'm going to take the stuff from here, from inside of here, because that's going to be basically what I'm doing. And then we're going to create the subroutine for the timer. Inventorix. Did I remember that right? Looks like I did. Alright, so these we're not going to do when it ticks. What we are going to do, though, is we're going to have those so that I remember them here. Just for a second, comment it out in case I forget. And people are sharing stuff on Facebook. Let's see. So what we're going to do is we're going to do dim sum of numbers equals number 1 plus number 2. Oops. 2 plus number 3. That way I've got all the sum of the numbers, and now I can do, it's going to be an integer, and 1%, remember 1% as double equals 1 divided by sum of numbers. So that is how I'm getting my percent there. Same as. Then we're going to do n2% as double equals number 2 divided by sum of numbers. And finally, n3% as double equals number 3. Yeah, that's not how you do it. 3 divided by sum of numbers. Right, and if you haven't done it already, if you're wanting to skip ahead to the part, just go ahead and feel free to scan to the parts that you want to see. I'm recording the entire process here, just so that anybody who wants to can see the entire process of programming this, in case they don't believe anything that I said in my video on the random numbers and how you're probably doing it wrong. So if you want to skip ahead to different parts, go ahead and do it. If you want to watch the whole thing, feel free to do that too. But anyway, here we go, continuing right along. Alright, so now I've got the 3%. I will be able to have, let's see, sum 1 and 2, or sorry, 1, 3. There we go. Alright. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this 0. And I'm going to say that you know what? Yeah, I'm going to say this is N1% in that. And then this is going to be N 2% in that. And then this is going to be N 3% in that. And we'll go back and clean that up a little bit. Now, this also would probably be best to just go ahead and round my percents to the nearest 2 decimal places. Just because. And so now it's become good that I actually added in the math import. There we go. All right, and for this last one, we're just going to go ahead. This is going to be a count. So this is sum 1, 3. And then this one is just going to be n number 2. There we go. So every time it ticks, it's going to set everything equal to that. Also, one of the things that I personally like to do whenever I've got a timer, I'm going to stop the timer. I'm going to dispose of the timer. And then I'm going to start the timer. Now, this may be a bit of overkill. The reason that I stop it is in case something, whatever it is inside of my timer event, ends up taking longer than the next tick. I'm not running over it. It'll do it if you let it. I don't want it to. I want to stop everything, let the timer finish, then start the timer up again so that it is an even number of intervals between when I execute stuff for the click instead of just executing stuff for the click every certain number of intervals. And usually the reason I dispose it is a habit that's left over from a long time ago when I was having a timer that would run for 24, 48 hours, and the ticks were actually causing overflows. And it was flipping back around and restarting the timer from 0 after a certain amount of time that the timer was running. So I dispose it, that clears that out, and then I start it again. That just basically restarts everything. Do what you like with this in your programming. It's just a habit that I've gained. It doesn't seem to hurt anything as far as from what I've been doing in my professional programming career. But anyway, that's just an explanation there. So we got this going here. Now the first thing to do is to go ahead and test this out. Make sure that I got everything right because I was doing some of the stuff from memory. So go ahead and start the debug here. Looks like it's starting up. Build started. Not on the most powerful computer, so this might take a while. Also got a little bit of stuff around the background if you can't see. And come on, computer. There we go. All right. So we got this going. Not a number. Of course, it's not a number. Now I'm going to run the coin flip. And would you look at that? It's exactly as we're expecting. We've got the number of times that we have gotten a 1, a number of times we've gotten a 2, and of course the percent of the 1 and 2 values, which is sticking around 0.5%. Gee, imagine that. Actually, let's go ahead and stop this. I'd kind of like to have that go out to more places. So let's go ahead and round this to the nearest 4 decimal places. And then we run the coin flip. Now you can see just how close it is. We're within a few percent of that. And now, of course, I had it to even farther out in the demo. I'll show you. It's just basically increasing the number of decimal places. And you see that we flipped around. The percent for that is a little bit higher. And I also needed to actually make it to a percent. Right now it's it's decimals. We're going to stop here. Now we're going to correct those blunders that we actually see that as percents. So divide those, and then we multiply that by 100, and we'll actually see this a percent correctly instead of a decimal. There we go. And times 100. Now that should show up correctly as a percent. We'll go ahead and move this out to 6 decimal places, like we have in the video, the original. And we'll run that, and we'll run the coin flip. And as you see, it slowly goes through and iterates in the coin flip. It's continually counting the numbers, and it's pretty close. On the coin flip, it's flipping back and forth. It's doing exactly as we expected. We're probably, what is that? We're 10 million, 20 million in to our 100 million count. Everything should be slowly getting more and more accurate. This percentage should be slowly changing less and less eventually here. This is due to the basically a lot of large numbers, showing that, of course, the more that you do something, the better accuracy you're going to get out of your percentages. And as we go on, we're getting a fairly accurate count of the percentages. It's about where we would expect it to be. It's slightly off right now. We're looking at being off by a few hundredths of a percent. Now it's starting to close a little bit more, getting closer to 50-50 for the percent ratio. I mean, this is a coin flip. It's basically this heads and tails. Out of 1,000 attempts, you got heads 499 times and tails 500 times. And there was one more flip that was kind of a toss-up. And we'll say 501 times for tails and 499 times for heads, just to do the rounding there. It's really close. It's not going to be off by much here when we finish, which should be now. And if you see, yeah, like I said, we're not off by very much. So that was the coin flip there. We tested, made sure that it was right. This is basically all it is for the number updates. Just getting us percents, getting us the sums. Alright, so now we're going to need the second test. So that was the first test. It did exactly what we wanted to do. And I'm going to add something in here. Actually, yeah. Yeah, that's right. I was having a bit of a brain fart there. Anyway, so what we got next is we're going to just come in here and we're going to do the button 2 click. It's going to be pretty close to the same thing. We're going to reset the values. We're going to start a new worker thread, and then we're going to execute that thread. And I am going to actually move this over into the subroutine because of reasons. There we go. Alright, so instead of doing this, the address of first test, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this first test. I'm going to say boop. And imagine what I'm going to name it. I'm going to name it second test. For the second test, we wanted this to be a number between 1 and 3. So I'm going to make this times 2. That should give me a number between Yeah, that should be give me a number between 1 and 3. And this will be pretty much exactly how you generally see it under normal circumstances. This is the second test. We're going to change this up a little bit. So we're going to do case 2. Actually, yeah. Case 2 and then case else. I'm going to add it to number 3. So now this should be, if it's 1, adds 1 there. If it's 2, adds 1 there. And otherwise, it adds it to 3. So this is our second test. That's all it took. Everything should be ready to go with that. In case you want to see the body of that again, we just copied and pasted from our first test, expanded it out to the general way of doing random numbers, and randomized that out like that. Then I almost forgot something. I did hide the counts in this, so I am going to do something here. I'm going to make this hide count as boolean equals false. Alright. So in the first test, when that's running, do hide count equals false. But in the second test, if that's running, I do hide count equals true. And that way, do if hide count, then this is hidden, and this is hidden. Oops. This is hidden. And then else, we actually show you the numbers. There we go. Now, all that's doing is hiding the counts for our run 3 second part. And can start this up and show you, in fact, that when I do, see, that's why we test, because that is failing my test. Oh, I know why. Because I still did not change the address of here. So we're going to change that to the address of the second test. Now it should work. And now I should start getting values for 1, 2, and 3. Now, this will be the start of a spoiler here. If you haven't watched the original video, please go back and watch the original video. Otherwise, this spoils everything. So we'll go ahead and run this. And as you see, we start getting the results that we saw in the original video. This is how we're getting those. And that's exactly as expected. Like I said, this is often the way that I see tutorials telling you how to do random numbers is just like this. You know, it might not be it might be round on here. There's some other methods that will also result in incorrect results, like a floor, ceiling, whatever. Seen various methods of doing this, but basically that right there, most common method for doing it, and obviously wrong. So we're going to go ahead and set up our third test. And the third test was just basically the second test, only we're showing the numbers because that was fun. Anyway, so there's the third test. And then we're going to go ahead and add that bit to clicking on this. So we're just doing this and adding the address of third test. All right. Finally, we're going to go ahead and do our fourth test. Our fourth test is where I'm showing you how to do it correctly, or at least a method of doing it correctly. It's not necessarily the correct method of doing it, but this is going to be the way to get your results to be more accurate. And there's a very small amount of overhead involved in getting your result accurate like this, but it does make it more likely to get your result accurate. So anyway, go ahead and do this like this, and we're going to go ahead and do address of fourth test. And here's the bit of the tricks behind this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do this. Only I'm going to create a wider range. I'm going to make this -1. I want this between 1 and 3, so I need to actually go 2 above 3. So I'm going to go to 5. So now I'm actually creating a random number between -1 and 4 is what I'm doing. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to do and I'm going to take this, I'm going to put this in my do loop, and then I'm going to loop while rnd num is less than see 1 or less than 0, and rnd num is greater than 3. So I've got this loop here while it's less than 0 and greater than 3. And actually, I don't need that -1 because I'm trying to do 1 to this. So I'm going to go ahead and go to there. I'm going to do a random number to 4. Now, if it's less than 1 and greater than 3, that will be my looping condition. And I think that the roommates are calling for me, so I'm going to go ahead and pause this video here, but I'm going to leave it right where it is. Alright, I'm back, and that means I gotta splice something together and edit it. I hate editing, if you haven't noticed. Anyway, where was I? Alright, this has our fourth test. We've got a number, generating a random number between 0 and 4, and then we are looping if that number is less than 1 or greater than 3. So basically, we're cutting off 0 and 4 from the equation. We're randomizing it. We're still generating them, but we're adding that slight amount of overhead. If it does hit those edge numbers, then it is going to try again. It's making it an invalid selection. So that is what creates our fourth test, and that should make sure I've got a fourth test there. We're going to execute that. And it'll take a second to build. Like I said, this has a little bit of overhead because you are executing it, checking that statement, and then looping if it is false. So you're going to loop a fair number of times. The greater your spread is in numbers, like if you're doing from 1 to a billion in your random number statement, the less overhead that's going to be, because of course, as you've seen, the less likely it is that you are going to actually get one of those edge numbers. But I think personally, for getting the correct spread in your random probability, it's worth that little bit of extra overhead. There may be, like I said, other methods for taking care of this. And if you want to muck about with those other methods, then that's up to you. But this does, as you see. Wait a minute. I think I did something wrong. Would you look at that? Now I've got the value 3 there. So obviously there is something not right going on here. How do we find out what that is? Well, we're going to go in here. We're going to come over to our fourth test. And I'm going to put a breakpoint right here. Now I should be able to see random number is equal to 4. Oh, see, there's the problem. It's only going to be coming up there. And not random number is greater than 3. So we want to only get these. I'm actually kind of curious why these ended up fine, because that actually shouldn't have allowed any of these other cases to fire if it should only have occurred when it was equal to 4. But let's go again. Obviously I made a mistake there. Again, this is why we test. It's still not going quite right. So let's go ahead and stop this and we'll see it's still 4. Huh. So this should be looping while these two statements are true. And it is not. What do you think the problem is? That's a good question. So let's go ahead and stop this. So we're looking at not RNT-num being greater than 3 and RND-num less than 1. So this should actually be making it so that it loops when these cases are true. It should do this, and then if this case is true, it should loop. That's what the do while. Okay. No, that actually this should be correct. This should loop while or. That's probably my problem. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now this should actually come back true. And there we go. That was the problem. There's a little bit of debugging in there for you. Now, as you can see, we're actually starting to get the percentages that we would expect to get. And there you go. Now that I got these right, this is showing you the actual correct counts and everything that you're expecting out of this. So hopefully you enjoyed the walkthrough. If you have any questions or any comments on this, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to like and comment and everything. Subscribe to my channel. And if I get enough positive feedback on this, maybe I'll start doing more of these programming videos. This one's a little bit more dry because, of course, this is the full walkthrough of the randomizer that I made just so that you can believe the results that you saw on the screen. Anyway, like I said, hopefully you like it. If you haven't already, this kind of spoils the ending, but go check out the other video I did on this that is basically saying the way you're probably doing random numbers in your code is wrong. And put a link in the video description below and maybe do one of those annotation things right somewhere on the screen, down there, over there, somewhere. Look for it, you'll see it, it'll be a box. Click on that and that'll take you over to the other video. Until next time, peace!